From misspelled names to gender markers, today we're breaking down how to change the most important piece of paper you'll ever own. Welcome back to Beyond the Bill Number, the podcast where we dive deep into the complicated and sometimes downright bizarre world of legislation that impacts all of you in the United States. I'm Stephen, and I'll be driving today, but with me as always is Sarah.
Hello, Stephen.
Hello. Today, we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. So not specific current legislation, but something that everyone comes into contact with eventually. Drum roll, please. Birth certificates. Actually, Sarah, not perhaps the most thrilling piece of paper, right?
Oh, come on, Stephen. Birth certificates are way more exciting than you might think, especially when people start messing around with them.
Well, okay, I have to say I am curious. When we're talking about birth certificates, what we're really talking about is people's name, as well as like where you were born and your parents and so on. But the name is the really key thing here. So the first thing to establish is most people think that there is such a thing as a legal name, that you have a name, you're assigned that name at birth. If you then want to change that name, then there's some sort of onerous legal process to go through. But that's not actually the case. In the US, just as in the UK, and in fact in most countries, there is no such thing as a legal name. You can call yourself whatever you want, and you see this a lot, obviously, with artists and things. So Cher and Madonna. They didn't change their name in any way. They just decided they want to be known as Cher and Madonna. And so all you really need to do is tell people what you want to be known as, and people should then call you that name. But obviously the problems arise when you want to open a bank account or you want to get a passport, because that's a bit different. The government and banks and things tend to want a little bit more than your word as to what your actual name is. And so what you tend to find with people like Cher and Madonna is on their passport, it's their actual real name, the name they originally had, rather than the name they're actually using. So changing your name legally so you can change it on all the documentation and things is surprisingly difficult, even though it should be easy because half of the population tend to do this at one time or another. So most women, when they get married, will tend to change their surname to match the name of their husband. A terrible, old-fashioned and incredibly sexist process, but one that many people still follow. And I think you did that, didn't you, Sarah? Changing your name from a rather normal name to Biffle.
Yes.
It's a great name.
I know. Yeah. When I got married, I've had so many issues actually with my name. And like I had a whole issue with my social security card getting given to a different Sarah E. Johnson. And she was like living with my number and it was like from the United States. Like the US government messed it up. And one time I accidentally got fired from my job because they sent a termination letter to the wrong Sarah Johnson. And I just couldn't wait to hopefully meet somebody that had an interesting name that I could have the excuse to change my name with. And yeah, luckily my husband has a very
and that's
very
why you
cool
got married.
name. Yes, I happiness, love, joy, partner, all of that, good, but not as good as getting to have the last name Biffle. So I did change my name, and I've been married for over 2 years, and I'm still going through the process of changing things. And I changed my social card the day after our wedding because I needed a new driver's license because my driver's license was expiring. And so I got on that one like really fast. So I had my social changed with my right name, and then I had a new driver's license, within a few weeks of getting married. And then I didn't do anything else for like 6 months because it was such a mess. And then I tried to get my passport changed, and then they kept spelling my name wrong. I had to send my passport back 3 different times to get it corrected. You have to go into banks with your like social, your marriage license, like all of these things to get your name changed. It is such a racket. And there's even startups now there's this one that I got that's called, I think it's called Newly Named. And you sign up for it and they'll send you a box of every piece of documentation that you have to fill out and instructions and like the steps in which you should do it. So like you need to do your social first because that impacts your bank cards and things like that. And so I bought this box and I literally have it over here actually. And I've been slowly working through it for 2.5 years and I'm still not finished. I didn't realize so much about this legal name stuff and birth certificates, but one of my favorite stories growing up was that one of my favorite ski racers, her name is Peekaboo Street, and her parents didn't name her for the first 4 years of her life. And then when she was 4, they let her name herself, and she named herself Peekaboo Street. And like that was her given name,
Oh
but
my
she didn't
God.
have a name on her birth certificate for like 4 years.
You don't.
And
It's true. You don't
yeah,
have to, do you? You don't have to
yeah,
assign a name to a child.
yeah. I mean, it's interesting.
Crazy. Who would let a toddler name themselves? That's insane.
Well, I gotta say, Peekaboo Street, naming yourself Peekaboo
It
Street,
is.
definitely made like that was her
Interesting.
path of becoming a professional skier. It was like destiny was like a name like this has to be known. So
Absolutely. But a lot of people do change their name. And obviously, when you change your name for marriage, you don't have to change your birth certificate. I think that isn't one of the documents that you have to change. But obviously, a lot
no.
of people do. So particularly trans people, when they transition to a new identity, changing the name is really, really important. It's like symbolically really important. Obviously, it's sort of your identity to a lot is wrapped up with your name. So people will want to change their name. And you're right, governments don't make it easy. I mean, when I worked at the Department for Education, I worked on this a little bit. We were trying to make it easier for people to change names on exam certificates and exam registrations and that kind of thing. Because obviously, exam certificates are another thing that you carry through your life, and employers will ask to see. And obviously, if it's a
Yep.
different name, then they might believe it's not you really. So you need to get those names changed. And yes, it's incredibly difficult, and the government deliberately makes it hard. And there's good reasons to make it hard. And that identity theft is such a huge problem. It's a problem that happens in all sorts of different areas, and a lot of people actually try not to publicize this too much because they don't want people to realize how much there is of it going on, and particularly in things like qualifications. People claiming to have qualifications they don't have. It's absolutely rife. There's lots and lots of it about. And so that's why there's all of these onerous steps to go through. But there's a big question, of course, whether it actually helps. If there's so much of it going on anyway with all these onerous steps in place, maybe making it easier wouldn't make it any worse. Maybe anybody who
Right.
also already wants to sort of claim someone's identity is already doing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So birth certificates then the whole process of birth certificates is still very, very super old fashioned. It's bits of paper in filing cabinets because a lot of birth certificates, of course, were generated a long time ago. So certainly my birth certificate was generated at a time when everything was on paper, sort of handwritten on paper, and it's in a filing cabinet somewhere. And now they're sort of digitized, but that's what they still are really. And there's a
Okay.
question of whether we should be moving to like digital birth certificates now, and whether we
Yeah.
actually need those paper forms. But they still are paper, and consider how important they are. It is weird that they are still these sort of paper records, really.
That
And
is strange.
yes, you do need to be able to change them. So, shall we move on to talk about what you do then, and what the process actually is if you want to change your birth certificate?
Sure.
So, why do people really need to do it? We've already mentioned one of the reasons. Obviously, if people want to sort of transition and into a new sort of gender identity, then they will want to change their name as well. But then you've got people like Elvis or Oprah. I mean, and did they make some last minute change that we didn't know about?
Yeah, actually, both of them have errors on their birth certificates. But yeah, amending birth certificates are pretty common, and people do it for all kinds of reasons: correcting mistakes, changing their name, updating their gender marker, or even adding or removing parents' names after an adoption.
So what kind of mistakes are we talking about here? Is it a misspelled name or something bigger, like your birth certificate saying you were born on Mars or somewhere?
Well, hopefully it's not that extreme. But yeah, misspellings are the usual culprits. Maybe your name was spelled wrong or they messed up your birth date or location. Sometimes even the parents' names need correcting.
I've heard there are other sort of big changes people make to their birth certificates. I mean, you mentioned gender markers, and we're talking about people transitioning. If you want to change that M to an F, how exactly does that work? I mean, is it the same process?
Oh, that can get a lot more complicated. So, if someone wants to change their gender marker, the process varies from state to state. In some places, it is really straightforward, like, sure, here's a form, fill it out, no problem. In others, you might need proof of surgery or a court order or both. And in some states, like Oklahoma or Tennessee, they don't even allow you to change your gender marker at all, no matter what you do.
So, depending where you live, then it could either be a very quick update, simple process, or having to jump through flaming hoops, or not even being allowed to do it at all.
Exactly.
So, okay, what about parents who want to adopt then? I imagine that then you have to amend the birth certificate as well, right? So, I mean, is that the same process?
Yep. When you adopt a child, the state issues a new birth certificate that replaces the biological parents' names with the adoptive parents. And it's kind of like a fresh start for the kid, and paperwork wise, at least. And you can change the child's name at that point if you would like to.
All right. So let's talk about a voluntary name change then. So as we already discussed, there's no such thing as a legal name. Technically, you can call yourself whatever you like. But if you try sending that to the bank or the IRS, they won't be quite so forgiving. They'll want documentary proof. And that starts, of course, with the birth certificate.
Yep.
So you're telling me that I could just decide one day that I want my birth certificate to say Stephen the Magnificent, and that the government has to comply with that, and everybody has to call me Stephen the Magnificent?
Well, Stephen the Magnificent, kind of.
Yeah.
You can change your name on your birth certificate after a legal name change, like if you get married or divorced. And if you want to be Stephen the Magnificent, then you just need a court order.
Okay, so if somebody needs to amend their birth certificate, what's the first thing they have to do? Is there a secret form? Is it buried somewhere deep in the depths of the government's website?
Actually, the process starts with checking your state's guidelines. So again, this is something that does vary from state to state and these different rules. And if you can or can't, you'll know from your state's website. But most states do have their guidelines online, so you don't need to go on some crazy scavenger hunt or, use a box online that will walk you through the processes of all the documentation you need to send when and where. But after that, they'll make sure that you're eligible, and if you're trying to change your own birth certificate, or if you're a legal parent or a guardian trying to do it for somebody else.
Okay, so it sounds like a lot of paperwork, and probably you have to pay some money as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Fees are always part of it, like anything government related. And the exact amount varies again state by state, but usually you'll have to pay for an adjustment itself and then possibly for another certified copy of the updated certificate. It's kind of like for a marriage certificate. When you file your marriage certificate, there's a cost, and then you can also get certified copies of it that you have to send every time you want to tell a bank that your last name has changed or something like that. If you're lucky, some states will waive or reduce fees, but that's pretty rare. When I had my marriage certificate, the guy really liked me and my husband, so he gave us our certified copies for free. But I think they were like $5 each just for printing and signing. So I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Sounds pretty par for the course. And so after you pay for your hard-earned cash, what happens then? You just wait?
Yep, you wait. And it could be a few days, could be a few weeks, depending on how fast your state moves. If you're in a rush, some places let you pay more for expedited service, much like a passport, but that's not always an option.
So let me guess then, you get a tracking number to obsess over like you're waiting for a package from Amazon?
Exactly. You might get a tracking number. Once it's in the system, you just kind of have to sit tight and hope that there aren't any mistakes on the amended version. If not, you have to kind of go through a process.
And so when it's finally in your hands, I have to double check everything all over again, yeah?
Yes. The last thing you want to do is go through all that trouble and have your new corrected birth certificate with another error, like my passport that had the wrong name on it a few times.
Well, I think we've cleared up the birth certificate mystery. It sounds like a mix of bureaucracy, a little bit of patience, and then maybe a dash of luck, depending on where you live. Anything else we should know before we wrap this up?
Honestly, just be organized if you're interested in doing it. Gather your supporting documents, double check the requirements, and keep calm and carry on. It's not as bad as it sounds. It's just going through the processes. One day you could relax and deal with the DMV again, of course.
Ah, yes, the DMV. That is truly the final boss level of adulthood. So that's all for today on the Bill Number from me, Stephen the Magnificent, and Sarah Biffle. If you need to amend your birth certificate, just remember, stay organized, stay patient, and maybe reward yourself with something nice after it's done. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye, everyone.